All right, welcome back, everybody. Okay, this video is a little tricky for me. Topic is still a little close to home, and so I'm kind of dealing with some of my own PTSD. And you would think the abortion one would have been hard, but it's not. This one, though, we're gonna get into it a little bit. It's still a little close to home. I will start by saying that this will be kind of a backhanded compliment video for men, and I am going to blame men, but not all men. And so don't take it personally, okay? Just really stick it out to the end and hear where I'm going with it, okay? So I want to talk about the rise of feminism and the apparent decline in women who want to be stay-at-home wives and mothers and serve their husbands, okay? And I did a little research before I started. Now, let's just do some math, okay? Okay, so less than 200 years ago, 1848 is when the first women's suffrage right to vote happened. And I did not know this, but it was because women tried to go to an anti-slavery event and couldn't vote because they were women. And so they came back to America, and that's when they pushed this. So I kind of love that it was women trying to stand up for what was right and couldn't because they were women. Then 1974 is when, 1974, like 6 years before I was, no, 8, 9, 10 years before I was born. I can't math. I was born in 82. The first no-fault divorce was really legalized in 1969. Single women were actually allowed more rights before married women, like owning property and signing contracts. That which I did not know. And then 1970, women's jobs were mostly like textiles, home service type things, that kind of stuff. And so, pushing to have the right to vote, employment, and education, things like that, right, is when that really happened. So 1848 till 1970s, really. I would not have considered myself a feminist. I have always liked working. I never felt like I lacked any rights in America. Like I said, I was pro-choice up until recently, and I have shifted my opinion on that. But my goal always was to be a stay-at-home mom and be a wife and to serve my husband. I never really thought anything about it, but I do believe that really took off because there was such a prevalence of men who were not advocating for women, right? That you look at weird things like feminine products and things like that, and a lot of that was not made with women in mind. 1869, the first kind of reusable women's product for their periods. So again, right around the same time as the women's right to vote, and it was created by a man. It was Lister's towels, and it was marketed by Johnson & Johnson. The first woman I could find that actually invented like a feminine product was in the 1930s. So again, under 100 years ago, women were not included in that process of women's period products, okay? So we were stuck with very little options, no options, messy options, whatever you want to say, because there weren't any men that were doing things on behalf of us, right? And then you look at the fact that they didn't even test period products with blood until like 2023. There was not even a health test done until 2002 for the toxins that were in tampons and products like that. 2019 was when they actually did the first study of health issues caused by those. Before 2023, period products were tested by saline, which is not, as women know, near the same as blood, period blood. And period blood is not like regular blood, okay? So I feel like a lot of this happened, this shift of feminism and feminism in the workplace, because, we were told, it doesn't matter what you think or what you want. If you want it, get in there and change it. If you think you could do better, get in there and change it. And so then women started doing that, and they started pushing to get into those fields where they could do that, going into medical fields and stuff like that, instead of clerical or domestic type fields. So again, there's that thing, right? Men were telling women, well, if you want something different, you should do it yourself, right? Well, okay, so then they did. So then women started going into the workforce, they started getting these jobs and really pushing for that. So same thing with like undergarments, right? The first on record breast supporter was in 1893. The first sports bra wasn't even invented until 1977. Okay, so it was like a half corset type vibe, which led to the underwire bra. And then 1991 was when it first started doing it, like when you see the first study of were bras actually good for women and things like that, right? So again, all kind of within our generation is when you started seeing women have a say in their own undergarments and their own period products. And I think that's kind of where the struggle came with too for women and feminism, because women couldn't have checking accounts, and so their financial security was dependent on a man. And we had so many men that were not doing the right thing by their women, by their families, right? I mean, you look at Married with Children, you look at what is the one with Archie Bunker or whatever, and you see these men depicted as awful, right? They go to work and they make enough money to pay their bills, right? But then they come home and they sit and they drink and they're awful. They're not leaders, right? They're not husbands, partners to their wives, right? They're demeaning, they're obnoxious, they're rude, and if more men would have held men to a better standard of, if you get married, that's your job, right? Like, you as a husband are supposed to provide a life for your wife, and not just provide financial security, but love and compassion and, companionship. So men kind of did this to themselves by, one, not holding each other accountable, two, by not considering women in a lot of aspects of life that affected women, right? Women couldn't get divorced because they would lose everything, right? It was not allowed. They were ostracized. They could lose their kids because they didn't have a job, because they didn't have any money. They would be homeless. You think about domestic violence, right? Where were the men holding other men accountable? Personal experience. I'm going to share some examples during this, and this is what is hard for me, because even thinking about it now, I'm like, oh, the anxiety, and I hate it. When I could be at a party with a married couple, a family, and the husband would get drunk and belligerent and put hands on his wife, and the only people at that party to stand up for her were her girlfriends, you wonder why she left him and became a career woman. Because she was never going to be put in a situation where she had to rely on a man to protect her, to provide a future for her, and to be someone that she could feel safe with, that was leading their family, right? And that you see so much of that, where so many men feel like, as long as I'm paying the bills, that's it. I don't have to do anything else, right? Like, they're not leading godly. They're not leading as men protectors. They're actually kind of the biggest problem. And when you can see that acted out in front of other men, and other men are not standing up, women, it gets ingrained very early in us that we cannot rely on men, that we can't trust them, that they could financially ruin us, that they could take us down, all of the things, okay? So I, again, personally, always wanted to be a mom. I always figured I would have a job on the side. It was going to be in sales or retail or whatever, because I like people, I like doing things, and I like providing that value. I like being helpful. During my marriage, I worked up until I had my first baby, and then I did have seasonal jobs and other things that I did, market, MLMs, like Dove chocolate, and I did, different things like that. I always wanted to have something that was my own, right? But what I learned in my own marriage, for as much as I would love to be a trad wife, that is my biggest fear now, is, again, putting my future, my security, my heart in the hands of somebody else that is not going to regard me in anything. And so I wanted to kind of touch base about that and, again, share my own personal experience that I got with my ex-husband at 22. He was 30. He was not even out of his divorce from his first marriage yet. We met March 25th. His divorce was final like April 20th-ish, 25th maybe, I don't know, something in April. So like a month later, after we started dating, his divorce from his first marriage was final, and he proposed to me June 11th. Now, his proposal, he was cooking because he liked to cook, right? That's what he always said. I like to cook. I like being in the kitchen. It's my, it's my favorite thing. It's kind of like one of my hobbies. Let me cook you dinner. Let me do this. I was sitting on the counter, hanging out with him, madly in love with this guy, thinking he's the hottest, smartest thing I'd ever seen. He was making dinner, and he was so overcome by the desire to have his girl and his dog by his side for the rest of his life that he proposed to me. That's literally what he said. I cannot imagine my life without having my girl and my dog by my side. Now, he didn't say me, without you by my side. He didn't say that I want to build a future with you, nothing like that, right? So red flags now. But again, 22, I did not think anything of that. I was like, oh, this is so sweet and romantic. Didn't have a ring. It was like spur of the moment. So we get married a year later. I did make him have a long engagement because his first marriage, he went on his date, proposed to her within 6 weeks. They were married within a couple months, and that marriage barely lasted a year. Apparently she cheated on him, which I don't know. A lot of red flags there. Okay. So we get married, and he is the CEO of a startup. Like I said, I was still working. I was a body piercer, working at the mall, and he didn't even let me have, didn't put me on the deed for the house that he had owned for 6 months before we started dating. So I moved in fairly quickly, like by June, I was moved in. And so he didn't even own this house before me, like a year before we were together. Had me quit claim the deed. So again, I had no home, no security there. Would not let me on the joint account for 5 years. I think it was a really long time. We had babies by the time that he let me on the joint account. And I swear the only reason why he finally did was because he lost all of his money. And at that point, it was like, oh, I don't care if you see how much money I have because I don't have any left now. Our prenups were pages and pages of things, and mine was like half a page with one checking account, one car, and like 2 dogs, right? It was such a stark difference of what I brought in to what he brought in, right? And again, now I don't know. I do believe that I should have been included on the deed to the house if he was serious. We did have a prenup because his biggest argument about his first marriage was that she wanted everything. She wanted like 50 grand, and she wanted him to pay off her rig, and she wanted to do all this. And so I was like, okay, for your wedding gift, I went to a lawyer and I got a prenup done so that we each left with what we came with, right? And then within, like I said, 5 years of being married, he had lost all of his stuff. Like his stock account was gone, his money was all gone. I say this because I had no say in any of that. He invested with a friend in a townhouse in Philadelphia. We live in Spokane, Washington. You know what I'm saying? Gave this person that he knew, I didn't know, $500K to go build a townhouse in Philly that ended up being robbed. The contractor took all of the money. It was nothing was underbid, right? It was all like perfectly bid to max out the construction loan. And the property sat for years. He rented it out, lost a bunch of money. I had no say in that. I had to just sit and watch this. Anytime I tried to voice my opinion, share my own gut instincts, or anything like that, I was rejected. Told it didn't matter. I know nothing. Stay in your lane, right? So again, this is why women don't trust men. Because I may not have the college degrees he had, but I had life experience, I had instinct, I have guts, and I'm right a lot. Okay? So we have babies. And at this point, he is gone all the time hunting, traveling for work. I'm not included in any of those trips, any of that discussion, right? He does what he wants with his business. I had no say in that. And when our youngest was about a year old, he decided to move us to Florida. And it was a economic development deal where he had 3 different cities that had come to him and been like, come move your company here, right? So I got to go to one, Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska, and I loved it. The people were amazing. It was like a 4-hour flight from home. It was similar environment, like landscape and, weather, things like that. it felt like home when I was there. The people were amazing. They made sure I saw kid related things, that I got to see the community. I got to have dinner with the mayor and his wife, and it was an amazing time. While we were there, he called me and he said, "We're going to Florida." We hadn't even met Florida yet, nothing, but apparently they came with the biggest dollar amount, okay? So already I'm like, ugh, okay, so it really is all about the money. It's not about the environment for our family. It's not about what I want at all at this point. And when I brought that up to him, his argument to me was, "I will always do what my board says over you. If my board says yes and you say no, we're going to go yes." So again, no security, no say in the direction of our family, and being led by a man who was driven by money. Okay, so fast forward 6 months from that deal, come to find out that, so I did get to go to Florida with him. And that night, after meeting the economic developer, I was like, ick, she's shady. This is off. She changed our entire itinerary so that we were not together pretty much for anything except for a political event. So we were separated the whole time. He was doing business stuff and I was out looking at homes. I did not get to see schools. I didn't get to see community buildings. I didn't get to see anything family related. I got to sit at the hotel or I got to go house shopping. That was it. I didn't get to see anything about the business, where it was going to go. And within 6 months of that relocation, he moved ahead of us. He wanted a 5,000 square foot office. This is again what he communicated to me. Ended up signing the lease on a 55,000 square foot office with like 3 employees there. Okay. Talking about how he agreed to all these things and none of it made sense to me. It was all red flags. Still had the office up here in Spokane with like 20 something employees. And in that 6 months, all of the financial decisions that him and his board made led us to a bankruptcy. So not only did we lose out on Florida, but he had to come back home and he had to close down his business here. Okay. All the while I'm sitting there going, I kind of saw this coming. Like I knew you didn't want to sign this lease, but you did, right? Oh, they made me, they pressured me, whatever. At no point was I acknowledged, included, anything, right? So I'm, trying to help out. I'm like, okay, what are we doing? He tries a couple more startups and I'm letting him do whatever, right? Because I'm a good wife, right? I'm at home raising our babies, just trying to like keep our house going, right? All by myself for like 6 months, right? With like a 1-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. It was a lot and it did not work out. So fast forward a couple years and I encouraged him. I was like, look, if we're not going to have any money, again, because he was a CEO of a startup, there was no savings. It all went back into the business. There was nothing, right? He had pulled all of his money out from his investment account 2008. The, stock market crashed, all of these things. If we didn't have any money, I wanted him to be happy because I was like, look, at this point, like, we're not dating. We're not having sex. We're not enjoying each other as husband and wife because he's always stressed out from work and money. And so I was like, do something you're happy. Do something you're happy with, that you're good at. He's good at hunting. He knew enough people in the hunting business. Go be a professional hunter, guide, sell hunts, whatever you need to do. So he goes into that. The first thing that happens is he goes and guides for 4 months in Wyoming. So he leaves me again with no money, with young children at home, and I have to wait for paychecks to come through the mail and not knowing what they're going to be, how much money they're going to be, or anything like that. And hoping that he's still working and doing a good job, right? Does that for a couple years, and I don't even know, right? It didn't really go anywhere, and then he ends up, he was working for an outfitter for like a year doing their booking, and then did such a good job setting up their system that they didn't need him anymore, so they let him go. Worked for another company, same thing, was a sales guy for them for like a year or so, they let him go. This was about 2020 when COVID hit, and we had already tried separating, I think 2018, 2019, because again, he was not talking to me, including me in decisions. He was home a lot, but he wasn't doing anything to help our home. He would start projects and not finish them. And so, I'm watching our house that, we had started working on together. Now, like, we don't have the money or the time to do it together. And every time I would try to go back to work, it was like, well, no, I need to go travel for this. So you need to be home. Okay. So you get really used to walking on eggshells. You get really used to keeping your mouth shut. You get really used to instability and, anxiety. And he drinks like every night, and he would ignore me. And I realized about 2012 that I needed to stop drinking because I was having problems trying to be a good mom and be a good wife. And so I quit drinking. He did not. And watching this decline of this man that I once thought was so smart, so great, such a good leader, who used to work out, who used to train for triathlons, who used to be up at like 4 a.m, like sleeping 12 hours a day, getting up, playing on his phone. Every time he tried to build a home office up in our shop, it got like 3/4 of the way done. Not even. Like he literally got the wall. He was doing, oh my gosh, what is that called? He was putting up the walls so that it looked like a finished office space, and he quit like 3/4 of the way through. Still had the materials. And so my girlfriend and I ended up having this joke. It was like, either you need to have the skill set and the desire to fix things yourself, or you need to make enough money so that you can hire people to fix it, right? And he did neither of those. Half the projects in this house, 99% of the projects in this house, were started before our divorce, and at no point did he finish them. So 2018, I'm like begging for help. I'm going to our church people. I'm going to, friends and families. I'm like, we need help. Like, he's miserable. I'm miserable. We're not a couple. We're not dating. We're not having sex. We're not working on our goals together. It's still very much like, I'm going to do what I want, and you're going to be here at home. And so every church, every counseling appointment that we had, it was always on me to do better. And I'm not even exaggerating. I have documents. I have all sorts of things where it was like, you need to, again, remember when we started dating, it was, he loved cooking. That was his place. He liked being in the kitchen, away from everything, all the noise. It was like, especially after we had kids, he wanted to cook so he could cook it his way. I couldn't do spice. He would make tacos knowing that I couldn't do spice. And I'd be sitting there and my lips would turn bright red, swelling. I'd be like, I can't breathe. What did you put in this? And he'd be like, ketchup. I'm like, you're a liar. Okay? So I would eat these foods that he would make that I couldn't even handle because I didn't want to rock the boat. Anytime I tried to make dinner, knowing very little on cooking, because again, from the time I was 22, which I wasn't cooking for myself really at 22, I was eating bar food and, fast food and whatever. I had no cooking skill. Every time I would try to cook, he would reject it. Oh, I didn't want that, so I'm going to make my own food. So it did not matter. I made steak one time on the barbecue, and he threw a conniption fit. Oh, I can't be on the inside looking at you cooking steak. They were such good steaks, you guys. And so I got shut down. I kept getting rejected, and it was, again, you want me to be this stay-at-home mom to cook and provide for you, but every time I made dinner, it was like he would have a bite of something and then he would go make himself food. So me and the kids would be eating whatever I made, and he would be making his own food. So even when I made dinner, trying to be that wife, he would reject it. We had a challenge that we each needed to plan a date once a month. I got my girlfriend, who's a caterer, to make us a chili picnic, which again, I didn't do chili back then. It was not my favorite food, but it was one of his favorite foods that didn't get made a lot in the house. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to surprise him with a food that he likes. She went above and beyond and like made cornbread. She made chocolate covered strawberries, and we packed it in our picnic bag that again, we had as a wedding gift that had never been opened until this date, like in 2018. Okay. So we drive up to our overlook. I plan this whole thing in like January. We go sit in the back of the rig and we eat our picnic. And then the next month is his. He does nothing. So I put together, I think I found, I think it was John Christ. It was like a church event where we got discounted tickets. I got the babysitter, so we went to this thing, right? The next month, it was like I had gift cards from Christmas, and so we went and saw a movie. I got the babysitter, I planned it all, right? So again, you're seeing a trend here, right? Like, he was told by our counselors to put in effort to plan a date. I could not tell you one date that he planned in that 6 months that we were trying this. And so by the end of that 6 months, and none of our pastors were telling him to get a job. None of our pastors were telling him to quit drinking, to find hobbies to include me in. For my 30th birthday, I've never been on a girls' trip. I've never been on a vacation that I wanted to go on. I've never gotten to do anything, right? I've been at home for my 30th birthday. I made plans with him and one of my besties who was overseas in Japan to go to Comic-Con in San Diego. She ended up not being able to go because of the tsunami that hit Japan, and she could not fly out. My mom was living here, I believe, at the time. So we had childcare for our kids. He backed out. Like, within a month of us going for my 30th birthday. So guess who went to San Diego by herself for her 30th birthday and took herself to Comic-Con? I had a guy try to break into my hotel room. Because he couldn't go with me. Oh, he was working. He was too busy working, right, from home. So he could have brought his computer. He could have done things, right? But he didn't. He didn't want to go with me. Every time he went hunting, I was never invited. He bought me a bow. I've never shot it at anything. I passed my hunter safety class with him, but I was never invited to go hunting, to go guiding, to do any of that. Why? Because I was at home with the kids, even when we had childcare and help. He would go to hunting conventions, FNAs, the SHOT Show. I was never included, never invited, nothing. He was living his own life to the detriment of our family, and I was stuck at home. When I started to push back, when I started to be like, we haven't paid our mortgage in 6 months, are you doing anything about it? I have video of him going, what are you doing? What job are you getting? I still have children at home, 5 years old, 4 years old, either going to part-time school or whatever, not even in school yet. I still had a baby, right? What are you doing? I don't see you getting a job. I don't see you doing anything. Video. I have video proof, okay? None of this is, I can prove all of this. I have receipts. So again, I got tired of pushing back. Sex became a running joke. Everybody knew from pretty much the time that we got married that I had a higher sex drive than him. And this is going to get a little TMI, but the amount of times that we would have sex and he would finish, and I always joked, he would assume the position, which was him naked in bed like this. Like, get on, do your thing. He would finish, roll over, and let me finish myself by myself, and then cry myself to sleep. He never cared about touching me, about anything. If I ever touched him, of course I always wanted to have sex with him. It didn't matter. I would hear that you only touch me because you want things, because you want to have sex. That's what I would hear. I would go up behind him while he was cooking dinner, and I would touch him because I loved his shoulders and I loved his back. And, I hate that you only touch me because you want to have things, like you want to have sex with me. Okay? This is what I'm saying. Beta men, fake alpha men, are the reason why women are like, we have to do other things. Like, we have to work. We have to provide for ourselves. We can't rely on a man to provide us with anything. And so, again, here I am like, how do I could not get anybody on my side in our church, in our peers, that would back me. Okay? We did a post on Facebook. I got his approval. Like, we are struggling. We need childcare. Okay? I was only getting help from my mom and my sister, who had their own drama, their own crap. His family never came over to help, never gave us like a weekend away, nothing. If they came over, it was like a Friday afternoon to Sunday morning, and maybe they would babysit one night. Maybe. The one date he did take me on, and I had asked very specifically for a date where we could come home at night, maybe have a little fun when our kids were in bed, whatever. The one day he took me on was to go play miniature golf in Post Falls in July in the middle of the afternoon in the heat. And then he gave me, like, he bought me a burger at the little stand there by the miniature golf place in Post Falls. So nothing I asked for, right? Like, I wanted an evening date out. And I don't mind playing miniature golf and stuff like that. Like, that's fine. But again, I don't do well in heat. Everybody knows that. We had to come home and parent for the next, like, 6 hours before we got to go to bed. So any good vibes or chemistry that we could have built up, flirting, right, were going to be diminished by the time that we got the kids to bed and we had to deal with grandma and all of that, all right? But I should have still been grateful. That was the argument every time. Like, you say you want to go on a date and I plan a date and you're still not happy. It's because you're not listening, all right? So I learned to deal with the kids by myself. I learned to get by myself. I figured, like, we were on state aid so many times during our marriage. One time when he was unemployed, and we had our kids at a private school, a private pre-K, because this was before Washington had made it kindergarten free. So we were going to Stepping Stones and we were paying for that. When he was unemployed and couldn't pay tuition, I worked in their storage unit and spent a month cleaning it out, filing, organizing, all of that so that we could get free tuition. When our gym membership was at risk, I, again, called and negotiated, tried to figure out how I could get by. Like, we'd already been, members for like a year. Was there anything that we could do? I was always trying to find ways to help us maintain our life, right? While he sat at home and wrote newsletters every week. I don't even know. It was like the same newsletter every time. And anytime I tried to get him to man up, to lead, to direct, again, we only went to church because I made us. We never said prayer. He never talked biblical. He never did any of that. He kept everything to himself, never discussed work with me, never discussed our finances. It was always off limits, okay? So again, 2019, I'm pushing back. I'm like, just get a job, like, just anything. Like, so one, because I firmly believe that a man ties his value to his ability to provide. So I knew the cycle of, if he's not providing, he's depressed. If he's depressed, he's not providing, right? Like, get a job, get something where you start feeling like you're providing value. I'm fully aware of that. Did not want to do it. My real estate career was always up for contention, even though the reason why I was doing real estate was so that I could do it with my kids. They had gone into school, mostly full-time, I believe, at that point. And so I could do it. Again, he was gone. So I was dropping them off at school, going into the office for a few hours. Then I would go pick them up. If I had showings, I would take them with me. I always made enough money every year to pay for my dues, to cover my licensing fees, and have money left over. I paid for our carpet when the twins were born. I had the money to do that. And I came at him and, like $5,000 of my own money to get flooring replaced because he was not providing that. And we had subfloors with babies. So even when I was doing my best and trying to be everything, and he was doing nothing, helping with other startups, trying to launch other startups, so nothing that would provide him an income, right? I was still the bad guy somehow, okay? By 2020, before COVID even hit, that April, we were already 6 months behind on our mortgage. And that is when I recorded the video of me asking him, like, do we have a plan for this? Are we doing like a forbearance or a whatever? And I started recording things because I was so tired of the fight that I could not ask a question like, how are we paying our bills this month? Without it becoming a fight of me, how I'm feeling to provide for our family. If you all know, that is right when we separated. By July of 2020, I think he had moved out into the driveway in a trailer. And then by 2021, we were moving forward with the divorce, and that's when I got cancer. Okay. So, oh my gosh, hold on. Okay, we're going to ignore that. That's actually my cancer doctor calling right now to confirm my appointment for tomorrow. So again, by 2021, I was done. I was like, I would rather not sleep next to somebody who hates me every night, who ignores me all day, who every time they talk to me, it's just demeaning and awful, who's not providing any kind of stability income. I had no job. When I started looking for a job, I got a night job at a hotel. and it was like a 3 to 11 shift. And so we worked out a deal that those nights that I worked, it was like Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, or whatever, he would pick the kids up from school, he would take them to the house, and he would sit with them until I got home. That became, he would get them to bed and then leave. So he would put them to bed at 8, stay till maybe 8:39, and then he would leave. Our 4 children, home alone. I think our oldest was 12, and the twins were 5. Okay? Home alone in the middle of the acreage with no phones, nothing to contact anybody if something happened in the middle of the night, and he would peace out. Send me a text at like 9 o'clock. Okay, I'm going home. Kids are in bed. And I wouldn't get home until after 11. So I couldn't even trust him. And he didn't have custody. I had full custody. He would get them every other weekend and these nights that I worked. Okay? Again, working at like Amazon part-time, and the conversations around that were, I don't want him to be successful. That this is what our marriage counselor was saying, that she can't imagine you being successful without her. She wants to take credit for your future, all of this. I'm like, no, that is not right. Okay? Having to start over with no college degree, having been a stay-at-home mom for the last 10 years, I was only eligible for like minimum wage jobs. How am I now supposed to provide for a family of 5, paying a mortgage, paying all the house bills, working minimum wage jobs? Okay. So I went to work. I was working that night job. I was making money. I was building up a checking account. I believe I had my separate account set up by like March of 2021-ish. So we had been separated for about 3 months at that point, and that is when I started paying my own bills, right? I had no child support. The only thing he covered was the house payment. April, I get diagnosed with cancer, and by June, the hospital, I think, let me go, or the hotel let me go because they did not, no, by May, because they did not think I would be able to maintain the requirements of the job going through chemo. So they fired me. It was, yeah, so I had worked for 3 months, got diagnosed with cancer, and then looking at now, okay, so I'm in the hospital multiple days a week. I'm sick, right? Like chemo wears you down. Again, the only help I was getting was the house payment. Every other bill that I had was coming out of my own savings, my own GoFundMes, donations from people, gift cards from people, Cancer Can't, the Catholic Charities of Spokane. For the next, 8 months, that is how I provided for our family. State insurance, state medical, it was all me. He had them every other weekend while he figured his stuff out, while he got a job, while he, lived in friends' basements, whatever. He always had somewhere that he could go, and did not even ask if he could have the kids more than every other weekend until the next year, 2022. And that is when I got my job at the Hub. So now my biggest fear for my children, especially my daughters, is that they will not have a skill to provide for themselves in the future. I still want to be a trad wife. I still want to be home taking care of my babies, but I can't, because I can't ever trust that another man is not going to fuck me over. And I feel like my girls are going to get that same kind of mentality because they have now seen how hard it is for me to start over at 40 with very little to no help from my ex-in-laws, from my ex-husband, and now we're dealing with him forcing the sale of the home. So they're losing their home of 20 years, right? The only home they've known, because of the man in their life. And he sees nothing wrong with that, as long as we both get paid. Money, 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 right? It's men like that really enforce to women that we can't trust. That we have to be those boss bitches bringing home our own bag. That we have to be able to buy our own houses because of men like that. I lead family prayer every night. I, I don't go to church because I've not found a home church that I really believe in. I think I'm getting closer to a home church. But I am constantly talking about our beliefs with them, the political climate, what's going on in our world. I'm discussing with them like different skill sets that they could have that even if they decided to be stay-at-home moms, that they would have when their kids are older, that they could go back to in case something happens. Now, again, men die too, right? And so what happens if your man does die? We don't have life insurance. We never had life insurance on Shad. So if something would have happened to him while he was out hunting, I would have had nothing again. I would have been starting over with 4 kids and nothing, right? Still to this day, his parents never helped with chemo, nothing. Oh, I should mention that my mom and my sister both died. So I did not have any help through chemo from them during their deaths. My family abandoned me at that time. And so my own stepdad was not there for me. My own brother was not there for me. Again, the men in my family did not show up. They were, my brother had his own family. That's fine. But my dad chose to move across the country to pursue his business dreams, knowing that he had a daughter here that was struggling with health issues and being a single mom and all of that. It did not matter. So this epidemic is firmly because we have seen either our mothers, which my mother was not, she was the cheater in our marriage, but seeing these men have very little regard for the situation that they're putting their family in. That is, I think, why we have seen such a rise in this feminist boss babe type thing. I firmly believe if more men were willing to be accountable, hold up their end of the bargain, if they could show that they're not just going to work their job and that's it, they get to tap out at the end of the day, we would see a different dynamic. Women don't want to have to work and still be the home care, right? They don't want to have to work and be the home taker when men don't have to do that same thing. I firmly believe if you're a stay-at-home mom, you should be taking care of the house. I don't think that it should be only your job. Men should know how to do laundry. Men should know how to take out the garbage. Men should know how to do dishes. Men should know how to cook because you're a grown-ass person and you should have those skill sets too. Just like I believe women should know how to balance a checkbook. They should know finances. They should be able to do these things as well. I think it's a complementary type thing. Until we see men of integrity back in full force, right, where they're willing to work and put in the time, plan family vacations, make sure their wives are taken care of, make sure they're setting aside a future, all of that, you're going to still have this odd dynamic. I feel like most women, if they could feel safe, would not push the feminist agenda. But whether they have seen their moms get cheated on and left, whether they have seen abusive men, whether they've been married to abusive men, it's always, generally, I'm not going to say always again, but it's always these beta, fake-ass men that are kind of in the story of these women that now have this mentality, right? Like being raised by a single mom, and they're like, well, because my dad disappeared or whatever, right? It's like you see this perpetually, this theme throughout these feminist women's backgrounds, okay? So I know there are men out there who do more than just work to provide money for the bills. I know men who actually do plan date nights for their wives, that plan dates with their daughters and their kids, right? And even their boys, like they make sure they have a time to go out with their boys and do things, right? They have set the bar so high. I know they're real. I know one. He's right down the road. Him and his dad, I'm like gonna get emotional, were better providers for my own family than my ex-husband, his dad, and my dad. They have done more to come help mow the yard, to buy me the tools that I need to take care of my home. We're just gonna shout out to the Ely men, Grant and Gary. I know they're real. I know they exist. I know there are good men out there. So please, good men, do not take this personal, okay? But you are such a minority. And like iron sharpens iron. We need more men that are willing to call out the lazy, entitled, slacker men who just do nothing. We need more of that. And so again, I feel like this cycle could be solved by a lot of men. I love, like I said, I still want to be a trad wife. I'm looking for that man that wants to give me princess treatment, okay? Not that I'm going to ever quit working or provide or whatever, have a skill set. But I follow different men's Instagrams so that I can learn and I can see the other side. And one of my favorite things is there is a couple that are like, let's normalize being like, dude, I've seen how you treat your wife. You can't hang out with us. Like, until you man up, like, we're not going to allow you to be a part of our group. Where are those men? You have more men holding men accountable, men that will step in for domestic violence, men that will encourage men to be godly leaders in their house, men that encourage. I don't think my girls have ever had a door opened for them by their dad. Ever. You get me? Little things that could show them how they should be treated. And when they're being seen that a man just works enough to pay the bills and then comes home and does nothing. Like, he might take them out to do certain things, right? Have fun, whatever. But there's no leadership there. There's no guidance there. There's no expectations. He's not building for them what an ideal husband and father should look like. And I do firmly believe that is why we have now overcorrected so far that women are like, we can't trust men. We hate men. And I don't hate men. I love men. I want one of my own. But I firmly believe that's what happened. You know, women that are bi, I think it's because, and we all made this joke growing up that we need a wife. We need a wife because we need somebody that's going to help us load the dishes and not just put all their dishes in the sink, right? This has been an ongoing, recurring theme for so long, for so many of us, because our fathers were not those men. Our husbands are not those men. We're not seeing it. And so we can't trust it. And so what does that leave? Our own selves. We have to trust our own selves. We have to be able to be the man and the woman in the relationship. There's no man that's like, I want to be a better homemaker. You know what I'm saying? Like, men are like, oh, I work, I provide, whatever. I keep my house clean, right? Which is what any human should do. If you're a guy in college and you have roommates, then you probably have to keep your room clean, right? If you are a single bachelor, you probably keep your house clean, right? This is not like rocket science. Everybody should be able to do this, right? But women have a harder time being able to be the moms and work full time. It's a given, okay? Especially if they got married young and did not have the opportunities to go get a skill set or whatever. I was not encouraged to go to college in my family. I was not ever really told that I could do more. I was never told that I should, aspire to be more than what I was. My dad was a salesman my whole life, became a general manager a few times, but always sales. Always in something that didn't require a degree, that was commission-based. And so that's what I grew up doing and thinking that that was the best thing you could do, right? Which is where I'm at now. I have no skill set. I don't have anything that really puts me into a position where I could provide for a family on my own. And I don't know how to combat that other than to start telling my daughters, provide for yourselves. Don't get in this situation where you're losing your family home because you trusted the wrong man to provide a future for you. My children have less graduating than we did, my ex-husband and I. I had a trust fund, at least from my parents. It had like 10 grand in it when I turned 18. Now I had to buy my car from my dad and I got kicked out a month after I turned 18. So most of that money went to rent and car payment and things like that. But again, I had never learned how to manage my money. I never learned how to do any of that, right? It was all my parents did it, just stay in your lane, whatever. Now, because again of that, I am fighting my kids so hard to have a skill set that will provide their life with or without a man. So even without trying to be a feminist, I am now a feminist because of a man. My children have Acorns accounts that I have started for them. So even with my minimum wage, I'm still looking at providing them a future, right? I've been looking at getting life insurance, but being a cancer survivor, I had to wait until my 5 years. So hopefully here in a couple of months, I can reapply for life insurance and I'll get approved. As far as I know, my ex has nothing. He makes over 10 times what I make and has no savings accounts, no education accounts, the 503 or whatever it is for the state where you can invest in kids, right? And they can use it for college or a home or whatever. He is still not leading his family. He's still not showing them how to budget or how to, save up or have a goal. So again, I'm doing it all on my own with no money, no skill set, starting from zero. So when I say backhanded compliment to men, that's kind of my point. I know there are good men out there. I know good men could be out there. I wish there were more so that it wasn't such a rarity, so that it wasn't such a small club of women that can say that they married a man who not only provides financially, but emotionally and mentally and spiritually for their family. Where are those men? Where have all the good men gone? And you can't blame us for reciprocating this behavior. Because again, if we felt safe and secure, it would lend itself to more maternal, feminine type behaviors, right? With my ex out of the house and dinners being put on me, I learned I could cook. I learned that I actually am really creative in the kitchen and I make really good food. And I like cooking food for my kids. I like them eating my food. I like baking. I like doing those things. And I didn't know that the entire time I was married because I wasn't allowed to. And when I could, I was dismissed and discounted and disparaged from doing it. Ew, this is not what I wanted to eat. I don't like this food. Now, again, my mom was not the best example of a woman. And so every recipe I had was generally something that she would have made, right? I didn't have, again, his mom coming to help me, teach me how to cook or anything like that. No one was helping me figure this all out, with 2 kids under 2 and a husband that was traveling all the time. I had to kind of wing it. And so a lot of my starter recipes were hamburger helper, Spam, top ramen, which we do still have top ramen and Spam. But now I make my mashed potatoes from scratch. Right? Now I'm like, ooh, farmer's market. Like, let's get some corn. Like, let's get some plums. Let's get some different variety. I have the freedom and the security to do that now and not worry about if I'm going to pay for it later with resentment, silent treatment, or the cut of my heart of watching him make his own food because he didn't want what I made. If we had more men that made us feel safe, we would let our guards down. And you would see that boss babe feminist mentality slowly disappear again. But we need men to hold men accountable, set good examples, and be those leaders. Okay? We need it. We need men that are going to take women into consideration when they build things. We need to stop being dismissed and discounted because we're women and we don't have a 4-year college degree or whatever it is that made my opinion, my insight, less valuable to my husband than his board members. Because I didn't know how to combat that, right? And now looking back at everything that I was right about and knowing that if he would have listened to me at some point during that, our whole entire future could have been different. Our whole lives could have been different. Our whole marriage could have been different if he would have just considered me once. So if you are a man and you are watching this, and if you are in a marriage and you and your wife, maybe she's not presenting how you want. Like, think about that, right? Men are the leaders. It's your job to do it first. Take that step first. Okay? If you don't want a feminist, boss bag, lady, whatever, you have to be the boss. Okay? I'm just saying. If you're a good man, spread that. Be vocal. Stand up and show up for the other men and the other families in your lives. Make sure you are holding those men accountable. I think that is what is missing. Everybody just wants to stay in their little bubble and be happy with bare minimum on both sides, right? But I have seen women who will work, build a beautiful home, show up for their kids, and their husbands will still be lazy, video games, beer, and just show up to work. Maybe work enough to pay a bill and think that's good enough. It is not. The rise of evil is because men stopped being the spiritual leaders of the house. The rise of a lot of this is because men stopped, for whatever reason. I honestly think it started with our parents. They were given the cushy, like, oh, you can get to go do whatever you want and you get to live your life, and oh, like, we're gonna baby this man, and then there's no accountability, and so they're just allowed to get by with nothing, just bare minimum. Where were the dads that called out their sons, that would show up if they heard that they were treating their daughter-in-laws like shit and call them out? Like, those men don't exist. That's my 2 cents on that. And I firmly believe that would make a huge difference in the world. And I know that there's now a generation of men coming up that want to be those men, that want to be the leaders, that want to, have women that stay at home. But you got to know what you're going up against. You're going up against generations of women who have been abused mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, that have learned they can't trust a man. So you are going to have your work cut out for you. You're going to have an uphill battle where you are going to have to prove yourself to get that softness, that submission to women. Now, I used to be so annoyed at that submission statement, because if I submitted to my husband, it would be to our detriment. I have experienced men who I would submit to in a heartbeat. Like, hell yeah, I'll listen to you. Like, you are taking into consideration what that would look like for our family. You're taking into consideration the time that would entail. You're taking into consideration. You're not just being selfish. You're not just being self-involved. You're not just doing what you want to do. You're actually taking in the whole picture and what the family needs to be good. That is the man I will submit to. More women will do that. So that is my challenge. That's my thought. We need better men to show up, to stand up. Just, again, side note, you look at all the videos now of all of these assaults in public. Women on trains, women or whatever, and the delay it takes for a man to intervene is atrocious. None of these men are lions. There's so much sheep, so many sheep, and there's no lions. We need to bring that back. We need to bring back the lions that are going to defend and protect and lead, so that we can do our lioness jobs of providing for our families, taking care of our babies, right? So, be those men. Be those men. Stand up to evil. Stand up to the outside world. Represent yourself with integrity and character and love and compassion. And I guarantee the rise of feminism will change. It will shift. Right? That's what I think. So, big math takes on that. And side note, I'm 44. I love to cook. I'm getting better at my cleaning skills. And I want to submit to a lion. I want a leader. I want a godly man to come in with a mission, with a plan, with a goal, who's actually going to follow through, who's actually going to do things that are healthy, be accountable. And I will quit my job and I will stay home and I will do whatever you want me to do. Until that day, I'm going to be a feminist. I'm going to work and take care of myself and make sure that I can't ever be a victim of a beta ass weak man. The end.